Okay, during this tutorial, we're going to learn how to create sequence images. These are the sort of images you'll see in motorbike magazines, skateboarding magazines, posters, and things like that. And they're relatively easy to create. So during this tutorial, we're going to create this image here, which is an image of my friend doing a backflip into the water down at Queenscliff many years ago. Okay, so that's what we're going to end up with. I'll close that, and let's look about how we do this. The first thing you need to do is open Bridge. Okay. Within Bridge, you need to navigate to the area where your photographs are. You can download these exact photographs using from Learning Areas. Okay. Now the reason we use Bridge is because we can open the images on layers. Okay, so if I go from My Documents, come across here to Subject Specific Files, and we've got Digital Stills, Resources, and Panorama, and then Panorama Sample Images. No, we're not doing Panorama, we're doing Sequence Images. Okay, so here are my 4 images that I'm using. What I've done is I've clicked the first one, held Shift and clicked the last one. That selects all the images. I can now go to Tools, Photoshop, and load files into Photoshop layers. Okay, you could have copied and pasted each, or opened them manually and then copied and pasted each one manually onto layers, but this is a lot quicker. Okay, so now you've got your 4 images on different layers, and you'll notice that after each photograph I've moved slightly. I haven't been that still while he's doing the backflip, so you can see the piers moving within the photograph. So what we need to do is align the static objects with the static objects. So we need to align the pier and the sign and this post on every single photo. Of course, he's going to change. And we can do that automatically using Photoshop. So click the first layer, hold Shift, select the last layer, and you can see they're all selected now. If you go to Edit and Auto Align Layers, it gives you an Auto Align dialog box, and it looks a lot like the Panorama dialog box. Again, Photoshop's really clever. Just use Auto and click OK. Okay, so going to align those layers. It'll look at the things that stay still and line them up. Now when I make each layer invisible, you'll notice that the pier does not move. The ramp does slightly. It must have moved while he was jumping off it. So you can see the pier does not move, or the post in front does not move, or the sign in the background here does not move. For each one, they're perfectly aligned. Because I've moved, that's left some areas here where there's no pixels at all. Okay, and we'll crop them out later, but for now they're fine. The next step involves hiding certain parts of each layer so we can see the action as it goes past. Okay, so to do this, we need to add a layer mask, paint over the subject to make it disappear, and invert the layer mask to make it reappear. So let's do that. The first thing we need to do is add a layer mask. And you can do that by clicking this little button down the bottom here of the layers palette. Okay, you can see that the whole layer mask here is white. That means it shows everything. Whatever we paint black on this layer mask will disappear. Okay, and it'll show through to the next layer. Be careful that when you're painting, alright, let's select a paintbrush here. Be careful when you're painting. At the moment I've got the layer selected, so if I paint, it's just going to paint black on the actual layer itself. So I'll Control Z. I have to make sure that the actual layer mask is selected, so I've just clicked that there. And now when I paint black, it starts to show through from the layer behind. So what we need to do is add a layer mask, and what we're actually going to do is we're going to paint out this part. Okay, we'll paint out the ramp as well, and my mate Adam, and we'll paint out so all of this stuff. Alright, so now he's disappeared. The last step was to invert the layer mask. Okay, so we could go to, so the way to do that is press Control I. Okay, so now you can see that it's, instead of hiding just that little section in here, it's actually showing just that little section in here. Okay, so if I Control I again, the other way to do the invert is to go to Image, Adjustments, and Invert, but I find Control I easier. You need to do this process for each layer. So let's have a look at that process again. Add a layer mask, paint over the subject to make it disappear, and invert the layer mask. So let's add a layer mask to begin with. Add a layer mask, paint over. I should specify also that when you're painting on this, it must be black. Okay. So we've painted over that, and now we Control I to invert. Let's do it again for each layer. Add a layer mask, paint over the subject so it disappears, invert. Okay. And now you can see we don't need to do it for the last one, because if we did it for the last one, have a look what would happen. Add a layer mask. Now when I'm painting over it, it shows through the background. There's nothing in the background. Okay, and if we were to invert it, it would show just that bit there. So we don't want to do that. So we can drag this layer mask into the trash. And we don't want to apply it, so we delete. Now we have to deal with these pesky sort of things in the background. So I prick the crop tool, or you can just press C and select really close to the edge there and hit enter. And voila, you've got your perfectly aligned sequence photograph. Okay, so we can zoom right in. You can't see any seams where the photo's been joined, so it looks quite seamless. So that's a very powerful tool within Photoshop. Okay, so having a look at the steps, the first thing, reviewing the steps again, the first thing we need to do is add a photograph, or add each photograph in the sequence to a layer in Photoshop. We then need to make sure they're aligned. Okay, even if you're using a tripod, it'll move just slightly, and it's better if you align them using Photoshop. For each layer, then you need to add a layer mask, paint over the subject to make it disappear, and then invert the layer to make it reappear. The reason we paint over the actual subject is because it's easier painting over just that small area rather than painting over the whole image. The final thing is to crop the image. Okay, so you can have a go at this now with the files from learning areas. Okay, if there's any questions, make sure you're asking.